Out of the darkness of a February, dangerously packed with power-punching Goliaths in the gaming sector, a new challenger showed up, like Claude Van Damme in that movie where he did that. And it's Serious Sam Siberian Mayhem, a game created by a group of modders now known as Time Lock Studios, as well as working with Crow Team, who makes main Serious Sam games. It's a surprise. Sam, like always, just drops his duffel bag made of all the legends of how good Duke Nukem used to be and says, let's do this. Also, the first 1,000 people to like and subscribe to the channel will get absolutely nothing. The only way to get nothing, though, is if you like and subscribe. So get nothing now by hitting that button. This is going to be a mini review because I haven't completed the game, but I don't think I will have a chance to return to it, at least in a little while, due to all the giant games out there. The reason why I'm doing this is because there's actually something a bit special here. Now, the first basic setup is no surprise. Serious Sam games don't go out to make you question what you get. Instead, they're about questioning you on how you're going to get through it. A first-person shooter with the speed of many older games front and center. You play as Serious Sam as he tries to chase down General Brand. Think Doom 2016, but far more wide open spaces and something that looks at least one generation older, and you're somewhere in the ballpark. But where Doom 2016 dabbed you into dire sauce from the start to the finish, as did Eternal, Sam is always one hell yeah away from a victory. He's that guy that loses and keeps getting up, a Rocky carrying rockets. The best of the Serious Sam games have always been this unique mix of exploratory first-person gameplay with fast and furious combat, somehow getting players to try to get all sorts of places for secrets or just one more powerful item, despite that high-speed feeling, making you think that you should probably get through it as quickly as you could. As you're playing, you enter these massive fields. They are beset on both sides by all manner of bad guys, harpies, biomechanical robot bipedal brain things, and rampaging alien steer. And that's just the first of what may be 5 to 10 waves of enemies in any one combat, eating up anywhere from 7 to 10 minutes of your time each go. And Serious Sam is almost nonchalant about that time. It's like, here you go, here's a wave. And just as you get almost through one wave, another wave comes on. But even more interestingly enough, if you change the difficulty and ramp it up, those waves crisscross one another and start actually crunching down in their time for coming out against you. And that really does help it feel different depending on whatever difficulty you've actually chosen. Like the Serious Sams before it, this game has you unlocking new weapons, sometimes variations on the weapons that you already have, as well as add-ons, and finding a new way through each location that you thought was almost impossible is sort of the name of the game here. There's a big difference between this one and 3 and 4. I had a better time with this one. I get it, Serious Sam 3 and 4 a lot of people liked, but they seemed to devolve for me before my eyes, with 3 and 4 showing more warts each and each time, especially 4, where at times it felt like sometimes there was just no map-making identification of expertise in creating fun locations applied to the game at all. Admittedly, you could say that Siberian Mayhem doesn't play its cards much closer to its vest. That's the difference, though. Despite occasional times, things don't start close at all. Giant battlefields let you move and groove, sprinting away from an enemy or dashing behind someone so that his best friend burns 2 arm-sized laser beams into his face for you. It doesn't mean there aren't enclosed areas. There are, but many exist on the side mission sections that you can find in this game, or that you can follow around and sort of identify, see a spot, and go, I know exactly what I need to do in this tight location. They're thankfully short and sweet in the main missions. It's a nice change of pace, and luckily it never sticks there. Just when you get done with an arena, another open space becomes available for you, and here's more waves of enemies just coming at you. Graphically, Serious Sam also hasn't ever looked modern. Well, maybe since the first and second games. Mayhem is the same thing all over again. Sam looks a bit like a character from a 360 game, and cutscenes sway between all right to having really weird graphical glitches and pop-up in them. That does show some of, most likely, the modders' base when it comes to the gameplay, and maybe not doing the full-on cutscenes that we've seen in their past titles. One glorious effect that Serious Sam games have always given us is excellent particle effects, and they're telling here, especially in their hit detection moments, informing the gamer. For example, you'll watch feathers fall out of the sky when you pin that pissy-ass fury to a cloud that's been attacking you for the last 10 minutes. As they explode pinata power-ups down, you see all these feathers fall around you. It's a nice visual indicator in a game that can take all the help it can get in informing the game player about what's actually just going on. It's the combination of that speed and the particle effects that actually ends up aiding in the movement. or at least the feeling of the movement. As you're running right and left or sprinting forward, you take out an enemy, and as they turn into this ball of molten feathers and fly just over the top of your head, it aids in that sense of speed that the game is consistently trying to deliver. Another thing that Serious Sam has always consistently delivered is crazy-ass enemies. Taking down scorpion men that are Gatling gun-carrying demon crossbreeds, looking at one bad guy 1 second and thinking, man, he is nasty, and the next you're facing off against 100 de-skinned steer with bones sharpened into swords. I've consistently loved Serious Sam's enemies since the very first game I played. They continue to develop here, and I love seeing them switch it on and or off, and the various different enemy groups that you can end up encountering depending on what difficulty you do, because more enemies will come out, and like I said, when those enemies mix together on the higher difficulty, a strategy that worked on a different difficulty may actually kill you in the next. Very cool stuff.
Hey, can you hear me? I could use a little help.
Hello, comrades. Who is speaking?
My name's Sam Stone. I'm heading towards Tunguska, but I'm afraid I forgot my travel brochure at home.
Wait, Sam Stone himself? Oh, holy shit, man! My name is Igor Ledov. Where are you exactly?
I'm, not quite sure.
A little less cool, the audio. This is about what you would expect. It's mostly clean gun sounds, though a couple sound really almost antiseptic, like they're playing and they have no real effect on them. But that's fine. I do want to bring up that Sam's voice actor had to have recorded this in a prison or some other cell of some kind. Everybody else sounds pretty much normal depending on what character you meet, at least tonally, in how their actual environment sort of reflected and caused their voice to sound a particular way. Sam's has this very odd tonal quality to it, and it's almost low bit rate compared to everybody else's. Then again, in battle, you're not going to notice this, only in the cutscenes, which, like I said, seems to be this game's bit of kryptonite. And if that's kryptonite, then the one big problem with this game is an entire planet made of it, and that's the save game. It is friggin' atrocious. Atrocious. I know it's bad. They know it's bad because they actually warn you during some of the little snippets you see when a game is loading to tell you that if you find yourself in a bad save spot, just load another save game. But let me break down the logic of that not being the best plan in some games, with Serious Sam being one of the culprits here. Apparently, this game saves at specific spots regardless of anything going on, meaning it's very possible to die, and when you load in, enemies are hitting you. Or you're in the middle of grabbing an item out of a chest, enemies are hitting you, even if you had no indication an enemy was there prior. You can die again on a reload because the game seems to be running also just a moment before the reload finishes. And this is an absolute killer at times. Let me explain this. You jump into the old game. You see, a gamer's not going to know that it's a bad save spot. They might be sprinting when the save actually is saving, and they may not have been shot or killed by an enemy. So when you go back and you load into another section, guess what's happening? You're stock still, meaning that an enemy can kill you because they're already in the air leaping at you. This is not a one-off kind of situation for me. I ran into it on every difficulty multiple times, to where I would load into a save and was being killed because it was steer or it was some of the leaping creatures, and certainly some of the fast creatures were already damaging me on that save. At times, I would have to go sometimes 2 to 3 save games back to find a save that was in some way safe. That save game system, they really need to look at that and identify, hey, if I'm grabbing something out of a chest because it has an animation run, you need to make sure that the enemies can't do that. You need to also make sure that either the player has to hit a button to continue or something else like that occurs, because that's not what happens right now. And another problem with a save game, when an enemy dies in the game, they usually drop items, especially if you end up buying a skill for that. Well, the problem is, a save may turn from a good save to a shitty save if it's saved when you killed a bad guy and he dropped items the first time and doesn't the second time. And for whatever reason, the game never dropped items again if the game was saving on an enemy death. Now, this was most of the time on the semi or mini bosses, where an enemy would die and I would get a little bit of a reward for killing them. Those rewards were there that first time as I was moving forward through the game naturally. But whenever I loaded back in, I never got any saves. This resulted in sometimes leaving an area with 86 health, 100 armor, once or twice 100, to having something downwards of 13 and 8, I think was one time what I had. So that is definitely an issue that I would love to see them sort of fix and make sure that the game understands that, hey, this character is starting at a really inopportune time, especially for a game that warns you may have to go back one. You don't want to have to go back 3. But that's the problem that we're facing right now. This is a game that I actually enjoy and I think is open and just more exploratory and just more engaging than the prior actual official game. But with the save game issue and some of the moments where you might see some of the mod work going into this versus, let's say, actual professional people who are paid to do this, where maybe they have a little bit more skill with the tools, it does end up hurting it. Luckily, if you don't want to get hurt too much, you can lower the difficulty. The game will warn you if you die a couple times, hey, do you want to lower the difficulty or load a different save game? You can load that difficulty lower. I will tell you, though, that if you are low health, the enemies do a lot of damage anyway in this game, because Serious Sam has never really been about soaking enemy bullets. It's been about moving around. So unfortunately, if you find yourself in a bad save spot, that can end up hurting you, even if you go down really low in the difficulty just to get through a section. Luckily, you can adjust the difficulty as you go. Speaking of adjustments, it has a ton of graphical adjustments. It's not as engaging as the prior Serious Sam games, where they usually had just tons, but it's still got a number of them for you to go in and get some FPS back if you want to. It runs pretty well. I didn't see a ton of stutters. I saw a couple, but nothing really absolutely egregious. And then in audio, it actually has a couple options I wasn't expecting, including a couple different audio codecs for you to check out. Audio, when it comes to the game, the explosions, the bullets, all of the different enemies yelling, it's a bit over the top, but I will say this. It had some excellent verticality that you could actually sense in the earphones, which I thought was interesting because I don't remember that paying off as well in the prior Serious Sam game. Especially in particular arenas that you face where enemies are coming over the wall, you could hear them come over the wall and actually fall down and track them. That was quite good. Unfortunately, it's a very wide sound channel for your front, so sometimes you'll hear an enemy and you'll be like, he has to be close, and then you go around a corner and he's actually quite a bit farther away than you would expect, and you really don't have any adjustments for that. But that trade-off is a little bit more verticality in the audio, which I actually quite enjoyed. I also think, like I said, this has some really enjoyable map, I don't even know if you want to call it map design, but just open-ended design to the maps that allow for you to engage and jump in. It doesn't look the greatest at all, but it sort of plays pretty goddamn well. It certainly does punch above its weight. And certainly in one of the places where it does so are the skills. Now, there aren't a lot of skills that you get in Serious Sam, but the actual way in which the game works, for example, slowing you down a great deal when you reload the weapon, but also having enemies that pretty much match or barely exceed Sam's speed, once you start getting skills like being able to sprint and reload, it completely changes strategies that you may have been employing at the starting of the game. I like it because you can look at it and sort of decide exactly what kind of tit-for-tat skill system you want for your version of Sam, at least at first. It worked really well, and you get a skill point pretty quickly, and then from there you get a skill point every maybe 30 to 50 minutes of the game. So it's not actually bad. You start to get skill points, you start to accrue those different skills and really changing up the way you want to play. So anyway, that's it for me. I'm not going to give it a full score because I didn't finish the game, and I think I need to. But I'm enjoying it. Despite the difficulty, I'm having a pretty damned good time. It has some issues for sure, though. Graphically, it's got some issues, a couple stutters with performance, and definitely with that difficulty and the save game situation. But again, this is something I think everybody should look at because the Serious Sam games have never been top tier when it comes to anything, whether it be polish or even balance. So a lot of us fans who play Serious Sam sort of know what we're getting into. Anyway, that's it for me. I hope you guys liked the video. Stay tuned to see a bunch more reviews from me. That's what I'm working on right now. Yesterday, I did a review. You can check that out. We're doing new Walk in the Walks. Check out the Patreon. You can jump in. We're doing everything from morning news briefs in there to streaming video games, all kinds of stuff in that Discord and the Patreon. Peace out. I hope you have an awesome week.